All right. Everybody good to go? Perfect. All right. Welcome. Thank you. First of all, thank you for not loving ultrasound nearly as much as you love FOAMed. I really appreciate everybody being here. This is going to be a lot of fun. We do this every year, and every year it's really exciting, both in person and virtually with the Twitter voting that we do at the end of the year, or at the end of the conference. So what we're going to do today is highlight some of the most amazing free open access resources that are out there for emergency medicine. Social media, other free open access education options that are available. This year, we've got 4 amazing creators who are going to present everything they've put together. They're going to do short presentations, 7 minutes or less, of their blogs, their podcasts, their apps, and their other FOAMed products. But before we begin, I'm really excited to introduce 3 amazing judges who are going to have the decision, or are going to have half the decision, on which person or team wins. The other half of the vote is going to belong to all of you. So thank you for being here, because it's your vote at the end of this that's going to allow for half of who actually wins. So please stick around. So first, I get to introduce my good friend, Andy Little. Andy and I have known each other for years. He's the APD at Advent Health in Florida. Feel free to stand up, turn around, do a little. He has research interests and experience in airway management, vascular access, podcasting. You have experience in vascular? Don't we all have experience in vascular access?
It says research experience.
Oh, research experience. All right, perfect. It doesn't say research. Educational delivery models, podcasting. His podcast, EM Over Easy, is amazing. I listen to it every month. Outside of his clinical administrative roles, he's co-host of EM Over Easy, as well as co-host of the podcast from Hippo EM. He also serves as the EMRAcast podcast fellowship director and really mentors all of the EMRA folks who do that, an editor for the Academic Life in EM blog, and the editor-in-chief of EP Monthly. Thank you for being here, Andy. We really appreciate you taking the time to do this. My other good friend, Dr. Lauren Westafer, my Massachusetts buddy, is here as well. She is an emergency physician at UMass Bay State, where she directs the EM Research Fellowship. I'm also going to add that she's one of the world's experts in the way that we evaluate pulmonary emboli, and is changing the game in the way that we do that. She's co-founder of Foamcast, which you hopefully are all listening to, and she serves as a social media and research methodology editor for Annals of EM. She's on Twitter at @Westafer as well. And then my good friend, Dr. Aalap Shah, who has organized this for years, along with Steve Haywood, who is back there. He is an emergency physician at MUSC, where he directs the ultrasound fellowship. Really? You're missing? All right. Well, thank you for missing the Sono Games. He represents the SAEM Virtual Presence Committee and is the editor-in-chief for HolocitySono.com and EmergencyUltrasoundTeaching.com. He's on Twitter at Aalap Shah, MD. Oh, sorry, Aalap MD, AALAP MD. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get things going with Dr. Lauren McCafferty. Dr. McCafferty, where are you? Perfect. Hi, Dr. McCafferty. She's the Assistant Residency Director and the Ultrasound Education Director. Wow, both of you are missing Sono Games. Thank you. For the Department of Emergency Medicine at University Hospitals Cleveland Medical Center. She also manages the residency and department's website, The Land of EM, and co-runs the program's social media accounts. Dr. McCafferty, it's all you.
All right. Thank you all so much. I have to say I'm very humbled and honored to be here presenting a project that I've been working on for the last few years. So thank you for this opportunity, and thank you to my team back in Cleveland for supporting me in this process, kind of letting me run with it and do my own thing. I wouldn't be here without them. So I have no disclosures. So what is the Land of EM blog? As you can imagine, it is a series of blog cases that are case-based educational content that is inspired by clinical scenarios within our ED. It gets its name from our website, The Land of EM, which was created by several of my colleagues a few years prior to creation of this blog. And the blog it's housed on this website. But before I get started into a little bit more of the details about this blog, I want to just share how I started with this, in case anyone out there is trying to figure out how to break into the FOAMed scene, or you're just not sure what to do with great content that you have. So when I was starting my ultrasound fellowship, I realized that there were several really great ultrasound cases that were an awesome learning opportunity for not just my colleagues, but other residents, the faculty, students, and anyone else that might be interested. But at the time, we didn't really have a great platform to share this on, and we didn't really have a ton of contributions to the FOMED scene, so I didn't really know where to go. So I did what I knew what we had available, which was send educational emails. So I would send emails with some tips and tricks on how to do better scans and share some cool cases. But I realized that I wanted something more sustainable and that something that people didn't just delete out of their email inbox, which I know none of you all do. So I used the website that we have as a knowledge sharing platform. I started to write case blogs and just have some relatable, on-the-spot learning for anyone that was interested. I didn't think this would have any far-reaching effects. I thought this would be more of an internal thing. But in the process, I started to bring the residents and the students into it because I saw the value in creating the content myself. So we took a clinical scenario from our ED, and then the topic was based on either unique pathology, some cool ultrasound case, something that sparked clinical curiosity, or something that was just a great educational opportunity. And then we distilled that down into succinct, relevant, high-yield pearls that were easily readable and easily digestible on shift or outside of shift. And then, as I mentioned before, these are created by trainees and then reviewed by faculty. So we started with POCUS in the Land, which was our POCUS blog post, which was how this all started. And we implement this during our residents' intern ultrasound rotation, so we get them involved in this process from year one. And then going into just a little bit of the content of each blog post, just as the general format, we start with a case, and then for ultrasound at least, we bring in unique ultrasound clips, describe the findings, and then kind of go into more of the clinical relevance and how the ultrasound can be applied clinically. And then we kind of do a brief background on the topic at hand. Depending on the topic, the length will vary. And then bring in the ultrasound findings and tie that together. The content can vary from more technique-based to improving your image acquisition and some tips and tricks on that. Or it could be more of a discussion-based format where you're reviewing more of the literature and some of the more controversial topics or debates, at least within ultrasound. So as you can see, ultrasound was the core, the foundation of our blog. But since then, we've added some other topics, one of which is a resuscitation blog, and this is led by one of our EM intensivists, Dr. McCluskey. Whenever we have a rotator, a student or a resident rotating on our resus elective, they compose a blog post during their rotation. And this can range from anything from cardiac pacing to acidemia to family presence during resuscitations. So the topic range is pretty wide. And then we've added a tox blog, thanks to our medical toxicologists, in particular Dr. Porter, who helps oversee this. And again, when our residents are rotating on their tox elective, this is part of one of their requirements. And then we've had some mini-series such as EBM, DEI, and then other various random topics that we choose, based on what the resident's interested in. But these are some of the areas that I'm hoping to delve into a little bit more in the coming years so that we can boost and amplify these other subtopics. Just some of the benefits and impact that we found in this process, in addition to just creating content for other people, is that we're utilizing what's already being done by our residents and our students, and then putting that into digital scholarship. In the process, it helps with their trainee development. As they're experiencing these scenarios in the clinical environment, they can reflect on these experiences and then use those to create new content. It also, in this process, helps them go from being just a passive consumer of FOMED to being a contributor. And as many of you know, there's so much benefit in that process. And then last but not least, this can also help you grow your digital or virtual presence. Just this year alone, our blog posts have generated 20,000 views, which I know is in the beginning stages, but we're hoping to continue to grow that in the coming years. And then we found that our blog posts are 8 of our top 10 most viewed pages of our website. So people that come to our website for information, they're being drawn to our blog post because it is educational content. And then last but not least, this has also helped us grow our social media presence. I know this has been a huge topic in recent years since COVID, and having FOAMed content to promote on your social media pages is really helpful. And that's generated more followers and more engagement as well. And with that, I will take any questions. Sure.
That was awesome. We're going to get some feedback from the judges.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're actually going to start, Aalap, you're already holding the mic.
Sure.
So we'll start with you here, we'll go Andy, we'll go Lauren, and then we'll mix it up for everybody. We'll just move on. So,
Great, I love it. I think you've done a great job, and it's clear to see like how things have expanded out from just like one subspecialty ultrasound within EM to then like basically highlighting all the things that your program has to offer. So I think that's really good visibility for your program, really good visibility for you, and it provides you with a wide variety of content. I think one thing that I find hard in like the FOAMed world when you're like in an institutional version of FOAMed is how do you then expand out, or like is there an opportunity to expand out to bring in other opinions or bring in like other people who have a specific focus, even within like ultrasound or talks, to help collaborate, and how do you do that? Is that something that you thought about?
I mean, I've been very fortunate that our faculty have kind of jumped on board and been willing to contribute. Beyond the people that have been involved, it's been a little bit harder to just get random volunteers, but I've been very fortunate to have a very engaged and supportive faculty prior to that. And I have found that engaging the residents and the students earlier on does help inspire them to do more content later on, or at least contribute to something, whether it's helping another resident start a project or a blog series or whatever it may be.
Yeah, I think the biggest take home for me is that you've built this into your residency workflow, that it's, you were doing it before, you changed your venue, and really, I would encourage you to continue doing that to where every time a resident presents somewhere nationally, you should figure out a way to put their stuff on make it a blog post. Whether it's an images in emergency medicine, a case report, or they're giving actually their research, is incorporate that, because organic growth is how a lot of this stays relevant versus the kind of a manufactured workflow. And if you want to get your learners involved, if you can find a way to get them duality of their work, to where they do one project, then it leads to multiple places, one of which on your blog would help give you content and also like lead to buy-in. So,
Yeah, I love that.
I think that it's neat how, again, it's built into the residency curriculum, so residents get to be educators, get to understand what goes into the creation, feedback, how to integrate that, and sort of what you're marketing and things, and get that experience. Not everyone's going to go on to be an educator, but I think that that's a great model to fit it within the educational curriculum and teach skills that may not be taught in traditional ways of the ways that we educate residents.
thanks, Lauren. Thanks, Dr. McCafferty.
Yeah, thank you so much.
That was amazing. Thank you. All right, so next, we are going to go with James Folan, who, how do we do it? He's virtual. So James Folan is joining us virtually from London. He serves as the e-learning manager at the Royal College of Emergency Medicine and represents a multidisciplinary team behind RCEM Learning, which is a free, comprehensive online resource for emergency physicians committed to providing high-quality open access educational content created for the Royal College of Emergency Physicians. We've got his video all loaded up. Is he joining us virtually?
It's pre-recorded.
Pre-recorded, perfect, all right.
Hi, my name is James. I'm here to introduce you to ARCM Learning. ARCM Learning is the Royal College of Emergency Medicine's e-learning platform. The website started a few years ago with a focus on providing the emergency medicine community educational resources to assist in supporting their journey through medicine and beyond. The website includes a number of content types that are completely devoted to phone, and that are accessed by an international audience. ARCM Learning hit over 3.8 million page views in 2022. We're looking to beat that number this year and have started 2023 quite well. The website has over 1,600 different content items, which is continuing to grow. Our content isn't only written by clinicians that are part of the RChem Learning team. We have a wide range of contributors from all clinical grades and backgrounds. Content is reviewed and edited by our RChem Learning editorial team who ensure that the content is sound and correct. We also have developed a review group. When our content has been published on the website for 3 years, our review team will examine the content and make sure adaptations and updates are made accordingly to ensure the content is correct and all our users retain their confidence in using our learning content. We publish new and reviewed content daily throughout the year. Let's have a look at RChem Learning. This is the main page which shows all the latest content that we have published for that current month. We have recently incorporated a mega menu system to improve the user experience for our community. Under the Learning tab, you can see different content types. Let's have a look at blogs. Our blog section had a far reach across the curriculum and are able to lend itself to areas that are more difficult to reach with traditional learning modules. We release a blog every 2 weeks and they prove to be one of the most popular sections on the website. We recently published a blog on the Muslim celebration of Ramadan and how it can affect clinicians in the workplace as well as patients, which got a lot into online traction. Clinical cases is another area of RChem Learning that is popular with our international community. We have cases written and submitted by clinicians following our submission and template guidance. We also host virtual and face-to-face writing days to give people the opportunity to contribute to the website and write their own clinical cases. An example of a clinical case shows an scenario for the user to read and then question from that with multiple choice answers. Each case that we have will have up to 3 questions per scenario. Once completed, the user is then able to view how they did on the questions, as well as provide them with further information and feedback as to why this was the correct answer. Each case also provides key learning points and a set of references for further in-depth reading. We release 2 podcasts a month, an RChem Learning one, which reviews things that are new in EM, as well as guideline discussions. We also have a monthly EMJ podcast, which our podcast team will discuss an interesting paper that has been published in that month's emergency medicine journal. Another content type that we have to support our users is our references. These are clinical guides on all sorts of presentations and conditions. They are presented in e-textbook form for ease of use, as we envisage them being used as a quick reference guide on the department floor. We have recently introduced a topic section to RChem Learning. This enables our users to find the type of content they want. Then we click on Resource. Now this displays everything we have on RChem Learning that is linked to Resource. Now the user is able to quickly identify the content or learning style that works for them and engage with this topic. They can select blogs that are linked to Resource or clinical cases. These are linked to Resource. And we see if we have any iBooks, which we don't, as well as our podcasts, which include Resource. To support trainees entering the journey of becoming the consultant, we provide a set of induction modules. These are designed and aimed for users to engage with when they are in their foundation years or have a time out of EM. They are short and quick topics to ensure that their knowledge is up to date and that they're ready. We have also developed and provided a paediatric emergency version of this as well. With the development of the Royal College curriculum, there was a focus on not just the clinical skills and knowledge, but a focus on the non-clinical issues that our community experiences. Thank you for your time and consideration. We're always developing what we offer, so welcome your feedback.
That was great. Dr. Folan obviously can't hear this, but for those of us in the room, it'd be great to have the feedback from the judges. So Dr. Westberg, do you mind starting off?
Not at all. So, I mean, I think that there's obviously it's a fairly comprehensive resource with blogs and podcasts and textbook scenarios doing it all. So obviously incredibly well resourced. which is impressive. What also struck me was sort of we adjusted to make it more user-friendly. I think especially someone who has neglected the user-friendly aspect of a blog or podcast website because I don't have the time or interest to do it, I just assume people will ignore that. So it's nice that they took that. My question for essentially all of this is, what goes into revisiting topics, and is that done systematically? Because we know often things change in medicine and we have a harder time unlearning those practices. And so just, one thing I'm thinking about with these presentations is, what's the process, and is there one for doing that?
Yeah, I think if you're looking for a gold standard of what a website should look like, they've always done a good job, but their most recent update done in January is, again, the example of a group that is taking a lot of feedback of what the end user's goal is on their site and then applying it to how they present themselves. But at the same time, you can tell there's a huge team involved, and if he was here, I just want to know, how do you manage 30-plus people running a website? Because I know that's about how big their team is, where my team's, there's 4 of us, and really only 1 of us does the website, versus they have a lot of resources and a huge team. So
They can manage yours as well. Yes. Oh.
Yeah, I think I share the same thought, which is like it's such a huge undertaking, and like they have so many different areas that they're invested in, and having that on the blog or on their website, that they can branch out into all these areas. But it does take such a massive team, and I think that's like the real takeaway is how do you manage that. The thing that I like that is not necessarily common in the blog world that I see is the way that they've kind of taken that content and then migrated it to more like a course format, if you want to take it that way. So I thought that was super valuable to add in questions and add in a track that people can kind of follow along with.
Perfect. Thank you all. That's great feedback for everybody in the room. So next we have Dr. Hill. Dr. Jeff Hill is an associate professor at the Department of Emergency Medicine at the University of Cincinnati. He completed a 2-year master's in medical education fellowship or degree, and has been involved in residency leadership since, with a particular focus on residency didactics, teaching residents how to be teachers, and asynchronous technology-facilitated educational interventions. Dr. Hill, the floor is all yours.
All right, thanks everybody for first allowing me the opportunity to present this project that we've been carrying out over the course of the past 6 to 12 months or so. We call it our Hit the Box curriculum. Really tried to leverage the FOMED infrastructure that we have in our program to tackle a problem that we were facing. No financial disclosures to make, and a special thanks to the other people that are on my team and the education committee within our department, and really the faculty at large who helped contribute to the formation of the content of the curriculum. So what's the problem? The problem is boarding. In our emergency department, secondary to both just boarding, which is a national problem and a particular local problem for us, and the construction of a new emergency department, we've had a decline in the actual number of physical ED bed spaces where active ED patients could be cared for. Since we don't care for inpatient boarders that are in our department, what that has meant is that we've had certainly some downtime on shift where there's opportunities for extra teaching to occur. When you look at the literature in terms of what do you do in response to teaching during times of boarding or crowding, one of the recommended things is to have an educational resource bank to rely on to go to. And we didn't really have one here within our institution. And so we approached this with 2 overall objectives. One was to provide a curated bank of educational resources for on-shift teaching during downtime. And the other was to try and roll out these virtual cases to increase resident patient volume by having these distributed sort of longitudinal oral boards cases, which I'll kind of cover a little bit more here in a bit. We did a needs assessment, asked the court listserv whether or not there was existing resources that were out there, and then did a needs assessment within our own institution as well to figure out, okay, what resources would you be interested in learning about on shift, and how would you like those to be distributed? How do you want to access those? We came up with a curriculum that has 4 different components. One is the hit the box cases, and these are oral board style cases that are rolled out over a longer period of time than a traditional oral boards case. Again, I'll cover that more in just a bit. And then 3 different categories of educational resources: procedures of the week, literature of the week, and an EKG of the week. We stored a lot of the content on Google Drive and OneDrive, which everybody had access to, but we distributed them in about every different way possible to see what would stick, essentially. And so we sent out emails, weekly Slack messages, and also updated Taming the Shrew on a page, Taming Shrew / Hit the Box. This is kind of what it looks like, at least the top half of the page. You see the procedures over there on the left. We've curated a list of open access resources addressing each procedure and put them and update them on a weekly basis. We have a list of 52 different high impact articles in the literature that we'll update weekly, and then have EKG cases that we update each week as well. You can see kind of what those look like. Here, basically, there's a standard EKG that's included, and then a separate PDF that has a small clinical vignette, and then has like an explanation sort of down below in terms of the case answers and that sort of thing. And that seems like that was super fast, but I don't know. We'll see. The other are these hit the box cases. And so the way that these are conceptualized is basically you're going to do an oral boards case, but you're going to treat it like a virtual patient encounter. So you'll start off by letting the resident obtain a history and a physical exam on this patient, this virtual patient, and then you'll let them go and do their other patient care responsibilities on the actual real live patients that they're caring for. And then about 30, 60 minutes later, you can come back and you can give them the diagnostics or the labs that they had ordered, and then they can figure out, okay, I want to do some therapeutics on this patient now, or I want to order some additional diagnostics, or I'm ready to disposition the patient. And then you basically can roll that case out over a longer period of time and hopefully try and challenge them in terms of like the task switching and multitasking skills that you lose out on when you have like low patient volumes. Obviously, we archive all of the resources as well. So, like, if I have already learned everything I need to know about, placing an EJ, I can look in the next week or a previous week and find a procedure that's interesting to me. And then we ask for feedback, like in the moment. So we have just-in-time surveys that we had the residents complete when they used one of these resources to figure out what did the emergency department look at that time, what was the NEDOC score, how many active patients did they have at the time they used the resource, and then what did they see as sort of the value of the resource, how did it contribute to their learning on shift. And right now, where we're at with the project, we've done this for about 3 months. We're getting our interval surveys of the learners' attitudes towards the project, and then we're also collecting the teachers' attitudes towards the project and figuring out how we're going to refine this for sort of a next iteration. Thank you.
So Dr. Hill, actually, before you go away, I just wanted to point out, can I just get a show of hands of people in the room for whom hit the box actually makes any sense?
Yeah.
Right.
So for those who don't, hit the box is like a colloquial term that we had in our shop in the this photo. Not that one. That's exciting though. Right here, this is the box. So this has existed in our pod back when we were on paper charts. All of the new patients to be seen would stack up in the box. And so if you were looking for something to do, your R4 would tell you to just go hit the box, or that that resident hits the box hard. Like that was the terminology. So that hitting the box was like picking up patients aggressively, and so that's where the hit the box term comes from for the virtual patient encounters.
Thanks, Jeff.
No problem.
As a Cincinnati alum, I remember that box, but I also realized for many people it might
Probably not the same, yeah.
All right, so I think Andy, you're starting off.
So I like this because it, unlike a lot of FOMED that just creates in the name of creation, you created to solve a problem. You saw a need in your department and you said, I imagine this problem is not just our problem. and then you shared it with the world. So to me, that's where this is great. Again, where most FOMED is, let's just look at a list of core content stuff, spew out some blog posts and some podcasts about it. This was something that I imagine everybody across the board would benefit from, because we're all boarding currently, and this would be a great solution to that. So.
Yeah, no, I think boarding is a problem, and we struggle. Like, I make my residents go see patients out in the waiting room and pull them into hallways or find ways to do that. And maybe that's less educational than something like this. So I think it's a really creative solution. I guess, exploring the website and thinking, like, this is great. There's a lot of stuff there. What happens when my resident enters our AnyDoc score into your survey?
Yeah, so like we had this behind a password there, and then had not really shared it or advertised it outside of our institution. And so, yeah, it would.
Oh, but now.
But now you can put it in there,
Now.
yeah, right, but.
Is it going to be like a competition?
Ooh, we
Because I
could.
think
Yeah, that would be
our
great.
score might
That'd
be.
be super good.
I was going to say, I love this because, obviously this is a huge problem for all of us. And I think if you're in this room, you're probably invested in teaching in one way or another. My question would be, I think that this is a great tool to kind of blend FOMED and the real world, so to speak, because it is FOMED, but at the same time, you're delivering it in person, which is an interesting concept. But at the end of the day, it's still on the end user to decide whether or not they want to use that resource and how they want to use it. So I think there's going to be like super users, right, who are like, this is awesome, this helps me do the things that I already wanted to do. How do you engage the people who are maybe less invested in doing this in the first place?
Yeah, it is a challenge. It's one of those things like the uptake has not been aggressive, but the opinion of having the weekly resources sent out has been high. So we're still adjusting it in the future to see how it's going to work best. So.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it, Jeff. Well done. All right, and we have one last presentation, and then make sure you stick around because after that, the voting begins. So we're going to finish off with Dr. Scott Bruce Wine. I forget what his first name is.
Mike.
Mike, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I have his book, but I don't actually remember his first name. Dr. Mike Weinstock, he's an emergency physician as well as the director of research at the Adena Medical Center and professor of emergency medicine at The Ohio State University. He is the risk management section editor for MRAP and the executive editor for the new podcast, UC Max, which is part of the MRAP family of products. He's the author of the Bounce Back series of books, which is really worthwhile if you haven't read it before. He is presenting virtually as well.
There is so much great education within emergency medicine. Some of it's paid, some of it's free. What we chose to do is to use the Bounce Back Critical Care book every month to have a book club. In fact, emergency medicine's first national book club, to go through each chapter one at a time sequentially, and to assemble a panel of national experts, some of those being authors of the chapters, some of them just being people who have expertise, and to really do a deep dive into these chapters. So before I talk more about some of the specifics of this book club and the attendance that we've had, almost 2,000 folks that have attended these different sessions so far, I want to just differentiate what we're doing in a unique way from some of the other education. That's also fantastic. One of the big things that we have is an interactive platform. So it's interactive not only because of the panelists that are participating in this discussion, but also because the fact that we have a chat. And we have a lot of expertise with folks that attend that can lend their expertise through the chat or ask questions to the panelists. Second thing is that we provide 1 hour of free CME, which is fantastic. And if you think about those 30 hours that you're going to get as we work through all 30 chapters, that's a pretty significant amount of free CME. Thirdly is the fact that this book club is entirely free. You don't have to buy the book. You don't have to have had access to the chapter. So just to back up a tiny bit and differentiate this a little bit is the fact that the fourth of the Bounce Back books in the series is not as much focused on that initial visit, although they are essentially bounce back cases, but really to focus on the return visit and put the reader in the footsteps of the emergency medicine physician who is caring for the patient at the bedside, and to come up with unique decision points. So we bring the physician, the reader, the participant of the book clubs to the bedside. We give them the scenario, and then we present clinical questions. And how would each of these be answered and addressed based on the literature, as well as based on some of the expert whisperers who attend these conferences? And we have had the best of the best national experts that have participated in them. Everyone from Amal Mattu to Scott Weingart to Chris Colbert to George Willis to folks who also have expertise not even from emergency medicine, but critical care physicians and cardiology physicians also who have attended these. And we bring people to the decision point. We talk about the different viable options, and then we go ahead and say, well, what happened with this case? And what did the actual physician who was caring for the patient within the chapter of the book, right? What did they do? And then we take them to the next decision point. And we go through 3 different decision points with each of these cases. And what this allows us to do is to have not only a divergence of opinion, because sometimes the same problem can be managed in different ways, but in addition to that, we are enabling the dissipation of recent literature as well, and it's so important that we say this, is literature and data, but in the context of clinical practice. And it's funny, I like to think, well, when you finish your residency, you say, based on my training, when you're talking to patients or consultants or other people, eventually then you say, based on my experience, but hopefully this is a combination of both. It's a combination of the data and then the clinical experience you get as far as obtaining appropriate data, getting a good history and physical, procedural competency, when interventions such as pericardiocentesis would even need to be done. So the book clubs that we have are on the first Monday of the month. We go through each chapter of the 30 chapters sequentially, and we've almost gone through half of the chapters in the book now. And we assemble a panel of 4 or 5 of these national experts. Some of those are book authors. Some of them are section editors, such as Lillian Emlet or John Greenwood or Joe Scheiber or Evie Marcolini. And we compile everyone together with focused questions to them. And then we also come up with controversial decision points and say, hey, who would handle this in one specific way? Who would handle it in a different way? And it's so interesting to see how people with incredible expertise might handle things differently. So I want to thank you so much for the opportunity to explain this further. If you want to know more, well, take a look at the website. And the website is EM, like emergency medicine, so embouncebacks.com. And the website has all the videos from the previous book clubs that anybody has free access to watch. As well, it has some significant extra material. So for example, for the second Bounce Backs book, the medical legal book, it has extensive trial and deposition testimony. And this is stuff that's really impossible to get anywhere else. You can go to a medical legal risk management course, but to actually see the true chart and the documentation that the physician did, because a lot of people are reluctant for HIPAA reasons. And of course, we have no patient identifier, so that's not a problem. And then in addition to that, to be able to see the opening statements, the closing statements, the cross-examination, mostly that's helpful for my main purpose, which is patient safety. And we can use these legal outcomes to make patients safer. But in addition to that, they're important because if you do get embroiled, unfortunately, in one of these medical legal scenarios, well, it's important to know what's coming at you, because this can be incredibly stressful and take someone who's trained their whole life for emergency medicine and make them doubt themselves or their skills, and maybe even make them have practice change. So to summarize everything here, this is a really nice opportunity for us to take this book, the Bounce Back's Critical Care book, the 30 chapters in it, to every month on the first Monday of the month to provide free, open access education where people get CME in an interactive fashion, and to hopefully do what is most important to all of us, which is to improve patient care.
Bounce back, bounce, bounce, bounce back, bounce, 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 bounce.
I was reminded by my friend Elora in the back that I need walk-on music. So next time we do this, I totally want Mike's walk-on music. So let's actually start. Aalap, I think we're back with you for feedback. Sure.
I think this is really interesting, something that we don't really have a nice forum for this sort of discussion. And it's something that certainly my residents are hungry for, even I am hungry for, to hear opinions of other docs on things that don't have definitive answers, right? Like in Foman, we talked a little bit about this yesterday in the Twitter sphere, is the onus is like you have to have the answer. You have to be the definitive person who's the most well-researched on a topic to be able to like be allowed to speak about it. And this takes a step back and says, maybe there's not a right answer, but the most important thing is that you have a discussion about this thing and gives a forum for that. So I think that's really valuable.
Yeah, I think unlike the other ones that are presented, this brings people from multiple institutions in a way that the other ones don't. And it's something that you would typically have to pay for, MRAP, HIPPO, to get these leading edge, or go to a conference, these like world experts to talk about a specific case. So I like the way that that's how he's gone about it, is let's have this be case-based, which is relevant, and then bring in experts from around the world to specifically talk about how we can better take care of these folks.
I think that this is cool for two reasons. First of all, because it's taking something that's paid, i.e. a book, and making it free and accessible, which is really like the heart of, I was reminded, it was a decade ago today that I graduated from medical school, and like foam was new and it was novel, and like that's what the heart of it is. And the second is because I think we're all so afraid of bounce back. Somebody comes up to you and said, hey, remember that? And like you start sweating. Yep. And even a decade later, like that still happens. And we often, unless somebody tells us that, we never learn from those. We just think, we did a great job. We diagnosed that P. Oh, wait, they bled out and died, and then it turned out to be a subsegmental clot that probably wasn't there. So I think that this is really cool for that reason.
Fantastic, great. Thank you all, judges, for giving us such great feedback on everything. All right, here we go. We're going to enter the scoring round, and it's actually right there. Thank you for thinking ahead. Appreciate that. It would have been very smooth had I actually just clicked that forward. All right, so here's how scoring works. Half of the score is going to be from the judges, who are, in dramatic game show fashion, about to write down the name of the FOAMed resource that they are going to vote for, or just one. But that's just half. The other half is all of you. And so please go to the QR code, please pick your choice, and we'll get that feedback within the next couple of minutes as well. Steve, is that, how much time are we giving everybody?
Do we get to vote twice?
No. You are not allowed to take your iPad. If you QR code, it doesn't count. 5 minutes? Right after this. That's how we do it. Sometimes we vote twice. That's right. All right, so here we go. Dr. Westafer, we'll start with you. And dramatic, I can't tell which one this is.
But everyone else can.
That's true, yeah. Which one is it?
Bounce backs.
Bounce backs, all right. Nicely done, thank you. All right, Dr. Little.
Mine's Land of EM.
Land of EM, one for each, Land of EM and one for bounce backs. Dr. Shah, you're still writing this. You're drawing, all right. Yeah, so at the same time, go ahead and use the QR code. Dr. Shah, which? Hit the box. Hit the box, all right. Wow, okay, so this is tricky. Right, for very different reasons. Actually, you know what? Do we do what?
Oh, it's going to be included.
It's going to be included there. If everybody's voted, then I would love for the judges to tell us why they chose their choice. I don't want it to bias anybody, though. So anybody still need more time to vote? Nope. All right, so while we tabulate the votes, Dr. Westafer, why did you choose what you chose?
Because it was a little bit different, but also there was a recent $29 million settlement from Massachusetts where a 43-year-old had a missed dissection aneurysm. It's scary. So I think that education around that is important and something that I think maybe is lacking in residency training.
All right, great point.
I chose Land of EM because it involves the residents in the program, so it's organically grown. You get buy-in both from people who use FOAMed to actually create content, which I think is the future of FOAMed, is we need to create more creators. And they have a great,
point.
Seems like a pipeline that will help FOAMed down there.
Thanks, Dr. Little. Dr. Shah?
I put it in the box mainly because of the name. No. I really enjoy the concept of taking the FOAMed and trying to bring it back to the more traditional teaching. I think that's something different, so I was excited about that.
Awesome. Well, you were not the only one, my friend, because we've got a tie for half the vote here. But we also, it's with 33% of the vote per judge, so it's 1-1-1. But for those in the room, they agreed with Dr. Shah. And first place was Hit the Box. So congratulations, Hit the Box. Well done. But we are not done. Here's the thing. So we have the people in the room. We have the judges. Thank you all for doing that. But we also have a social media vote. Dr. Shah, can you tell us a little bit about how that works?
Sure. So our lovely staff are going to speak on behalf of each of our presenters here. And then this is your best is now to go on some business for your talk or your educational product. So we kind of see how much traction online and determine based on like the
Because it is close. Second place was Bounce Backs. Third place was the RCEM. So it's still hit the boxes in the lead, but it still could change depending on what happens on social media. So thanks for joining today, but also thanks for posting this on social media and drumming up some more votes. At the end of this, the winner actually is going to be featured in an SAEM Pulse article. It's going to be retweeted and be promoted by the SAEM social media accounts across the board. And so hopefully the winner will get a lot more traction throughout the field of emergency medicine. Thank you to all our presenters. Thank you very much to all the judges. Thank you all for being here. Have a great rest of your morning.